Officers Mark Corbin and Paul Vance were predators of a specific kind. They didn't hunt in alleys. They hunted in the sterile, linoleum-tiled hallways of power. They were bored, and their badges made them gods in their own small minds. When they saw the black woman at the security checkpoint, they didn't see a citizen. They saw a diversion. She was well-dressed, which they took as an affront, an uppity display. She looked to them like a high-priced lawyer or maybe a defendant's relative, someone they could casually, legally break. "That one," Corbin murmured to Vance, nodding, "matches the description." Vance smiled. There was always a description. They signaled to Deputy Miller at the security post, a man whose petty tyranny was a courthouse legend. Miller, seeing his friends, was happy to play. He barked at the woman, and the game began. They dragged her from the public eye into a sterile, windowless back room. It smelled of stale coffee and industrial bleach. "What is the meaning of this?" she demanded, her voice low and controlled. "Means you're in our house, sweetheart," Corbin sneered. He shoved her into a metal chair. "Empty your pockets." "I will not. I am Federal Judge Evelyn Reed. My courtroom is waiting." This only made them laugh. "A judge?" Vance said, circling her. "That's a new one. I'm the King of England, then. Nice to meet you." He ripped her briefcase from her hand, dumping its contents, legal briefs, a highlighter, a copy of the Constitution, onto the floor. Corbin produced the handcuffs. The cold metal bit into her wrists. She didn't struggle. She watched them. She memorized their faces, their names, the way Corbin's left eye twitched, the way Vance favored his right leg. "You're making a mistake that will end your careers," she said, not as a plea, but as a statement of fact. This angered Corbin. "Our careers. We're going to teach you some respect." He went to a locker and pulled out a pair of electric clippers. The hum filled the small, cold room. "You can't be serious," she said, her composure cracking for just a second. "Gotta make sure you're not hiding anything," Vance said, his voice slick. He grabbed her by the shoulders, forcing her head forward. "Hold still, Your Honor." Corbin clicked the clippers on. He laughed as he put the buzzing metal to her scalp, shearing a long, wide path through her hair. Clumps fell to the floor, dark against the gray tile. He wasn't neat. This wasn't a haircut. It was a mutilation, a ritual of humiliation. Vance took out his phone and started snapping pictures, laughing. "Smile for the camera, Judge." She closed her eyes. She focused on her breathing. She thought of the law. Assault, battery, kidnapping under color of law, conspiracy against rights. With every pass of the clippers, their list of charges grew. They thought they were breaking her. They were, in fact, handing her the very weapon she would use to destroy them. When they were done, her head was a patchwork of uneven tufts and bleeding red scrapes. Corbin blew the hair off his clippers. "There, all clean." They unlocked her cuffs, shoved her badge back at her, and pushed her out the door. "Have a nice day in court, Judge." They left her in the hallway, her briefcase contents scattered, her dignity assaulted, her head bare. But they had made one fatal, career-ending error. Judge Evelyn Reed was presiding over a hearing that morning, a critical police misconduct case, the one against officers Mark Corbin and Paul Vance. Their reckoning wasn't coming. It was already here. Before we go any further, comment where in the world you are watching from and make sure to subscribe because tomorrow's story is one you don't want to miss. Evelyn Reed stood in the hallway for 1 full minute. Clerks and lawyers scurried past, their eyes sliding away, pretending not to see. They were afraid. Afraid of the officers, afraid of the system, afraid to make eye contact with this woman who had so clearly been violated inside the Temple of Justice. Evelyn's heart was a war drum against her ribs. Humiliation burned hot in her stomach, threatening to rise as bile. She wanted to scream. She wanted to run. Instead, she bent down, her movements deliberate, her back straight. She picked up her copy of the Constitution. She gathered her scattered briefs. She methodically repacked her briefcase. She ran a hand over her savage scalp, feeling the sting of the cuts. Then she straightened her charcoal gray suit jacket, took a deep breath, and began to walk. Her heels clicked on the marble floor. Each step was an echo. Click, click, click. She was no longer a victim. She was the law. The courtroom was packed. It was a high-profile hearing. Reporters lined the back wall. Community activists, weary and angry, filled the benches. At the defense table, officers Corbin and Vance sat with their union-appointed lawyer, laughing, sharing a joke. They hadn't even bothered to wash their hands. The clerk's voice cut through the buzz. "All rise. The Honorable Judge Evelyn Reed presiding." The heavy chamber doors swung open. A collective, audible gasp swept the room. The reporters scribbled frantically. The activists rose to their feet, not out of protocol, but in shock. Evelyn Reed walked toward the bench, her face a mask of calm, professional neutrality. Her bald, mutilated head, gleaming with red scrapes under the harsh courtroom lights, was a testament. At the defense table, Paul Vance dropped his pen. It clattered loudly in the sudden tomb-like silence. Mark Corbin's smug grin froze, then melted into a mask of pale, sickly horror. They stared, their minds unable to process the reality. The woman they had just brutalized was the judge. Evelyn ascended the steps, her movements fluid and unhurried. She slipped on her black judicial robe, the familiar weight settling on her shoulders like armor. She sat in her high-backed leather chair. She looked out over the stunned courtroom. Her gaze settled, just for a moment, on Corbin and Vance. They looked like men who had just seen a ghost. She picked up her gavel. "Good morning," she said. Her voice, amplified by the microphone, was clear, steady, and sharp as a razor. It cut through the silence. "We are here for case number 2023 CR 405, United States versus officers Mark Corbin and Paul Vance." Corbin's leg began to vibrate under the table, a frantic, uncontrollable tremor. The defense attorney, oblivious to what his clients had just done, jumped to his feet. "Your Honor, the defense requests an immediate sidebar. We have some procedural matters." "Denied, counsel," Evelyn said, her tone brooking no argument. "The time for private procedural matters is over. Everything in this case, from this moment forward, will be on the public record. You may be seated." The attorney, stunned by her appearance but more by her tone, sat down, whispering frantically to his clients. They couldn't even look at him. "The prosecution may call its first witness," Judge Reed said. The prosecutor, a young woman who looked both horrified and emboldened by the judge's appearance, rose. "Your Honor, the United States calls Anna Garcia." A small, older woman made her way to the stand. She was visibly trembling. As she testified, she painted a harrowing picture. She described how Corbin and Vance had pulled her teenage son over for playing his music too loud, how they dragged him from the car, beat him on the sidewalk while calling him racial slurs, and then arrested him for assaulting an officer. They broke his arm," Ms. Garcia wept. "And then they laughed. They said he deserved it." Judge Reed listened, her face impassive. But inside she was connecting the dots. The casual cruelty. The laughter. This wasn't an aberration. It was a pattern. More witnesses came. A store owner whose security camera, which captured Corbin planting drugs on a suspect, had its footage mysteriously erased from the evidence locker. A young man who was choked until he passed out for talking back. With each testimony, the noose tightened. Corbin and Vance had shrunk in their seats. Their arrogance had evaporated, replaced by the sour animal smell of fear. As the lunch hour approached, Judge Reed finally looked at the clock. "This court will recess for 1 hour," she announced. Her gavel strike was the sound of a trap snapping shut. "All rise." As she swept from the bench, leaving Corbin and Vance to stew in their new reality, she had only one thought. The officers were just the symptom. It was time to find the disease. She didn't go to lunch. She went to her chambers and summoned her clerk, Leo. "Get me the complete, unsealed personnel file for Deputy Miller from security, and I want 2 U.S. Marshals at my door. Now." Leo, who had seen her enter the courtroom, just nodded, his eyes filled with a cold fury she had never seen in him. "Yes, Judge." 5 minutes later, Deputy Miller, the man who had watched her assault with a satisfied smirk, was escorted into her chambers. The marshals stood at the door. "You wanted to see me, Judge Reed?" he asked, still trying for his usual swagger. It faltered. "Sit down, Deputy," Evelyn said. He remained standing. It was not a request. Miller sat. Evelyn laced her fingers on her desk. "I have spent the last 30 minutes reviewing your complete personnel file. Not the official one, the real one." Miller's face went pale. "My file is clean." "Is it?" Evelyn picked up a thick folder. "Let's review. March 2015. Complaint filed by attorney Ana Garcia, the same woman who just testified, alleging you subjected her to degrading comments and an illegal search. Complaint dismissed by Internal Affairs." That was a misunderstanding. July 2017. Complaint by attorney David Chen, alleging you singled out his African American clients for additional screening while letting white defendants pass. Dismissed. September 2019. Complaint by a female clerk alleging sexual harassment. Dismissed, and the clerk was transferred a week later. There are, in fact, 47 complaints in this file, Deputy. All of them, all this pattern of abuse, all buried. "You can't prove any of that," Miller spat. "I don't have to," Evelyn said. She nodded to Leo. "Play the recording." Leo pressed a button on a digital recorder. The room filled with the sounds from that morning. Miller's voice. "Hold her down tight. Let's show this one what happens when they don't know their place." Corbin's voice. "Smile for the camera, Judge." The unmistakable buzzing hum of the clippers. Their shared laughter. Miller looked like he had been turned to stone. "Your badge, Deputy Miller," Evelyn said, her voice quiet. "You can't. Your badge, now." Her voice cut through the room. "You are suspended, effective immediately. You are being charged with conspiracy against rights, obstruction of justice, and accessory to aggravated assault. Marshals." The 2 marshals moved in. The sound of the handcuffs clicking onto Miller's wrists was the sweetest sound Evelyn had heard all day. That night, the system she had just challenged declared war on her. The police union president was on every news channel, his face red, decrying her as an activist, emotionally compromised judge on a personal vendetta. Pundits, fed talking points, questioned her bizarre behavior and unstable appearance, demanding her recusal. District Attorney Samuel Kirby, a man whose political ambitions were funded by the police union, gave a statement. His face was a mask of false concern, talking about the importance of impartiality and his deep concerns about personal vendettas in the judiciary. Protesters appeared outside her home. One group, organized and angry, held "Back the Blue" signs, shouting for her removal. Another group, smaller but growing, held signs that said, "Justice for Judge Reed." She watched it all from her window, her hand unconsciously tracing the scrapes on her head. They thought this would scare her. They were wrong. This was just confirmation. The next morning, her clerk Leo was approached in the parking garage. A young junior clerk, Nina Petrova, was shaking so hard she could barely speak. I saw it, Leo," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "I was in the observation room. I recorded it on my phone." She shoved a small USB drive into his hand. "Chief Judge Thorne. He saw me. He called me into his office. He said I saw nothing. He said I should forget it if I value my career. Please, take this. Don't tell them it was me." Leo brought the drive straight to Evelyn. 3 hours later, Nina Petrova was fired, escorted from the building for violating courthouse protocols. "The official footage is gone, isn't it?" Evelyn asked, holding the small drive. "Vanished," Leo said, his voice tight. "A corrupted file. Thorne didn't just know, Judge. He orchestrated it. He's been bearing these cases for years. This was supposed to be a message to you." "He's about to get a message back," Evelyn said, locking the drive in her private safe. Help came from an unexpected place. A plainclothes detective, Ben Carter, showed up at her chambers, hat in hand. "Judge," he said, "I heard what you did to Miller. I've been waiting 20 years for someone to do that." Carter was an old-school detective who was sick of the corruption. "I've worked with Corbin and Vance," he said. "They're animals, but they're protected. I've got files. I've got records. They've been planting evidence, shaking down dealers, and a cut always goes upstairs. To Thorne, to Kirby. They have a whole system." "Are you willing to testify?" Evelyn asked. "If you're willing to stand, Judge, so am I," Carter said. He testified that afternoon. He laid out the entire conspiracy, complete with dates, case numbers, and bank trails. The courtroom was silent. The defense attorney was apoplectic. And from the defense table, Mark Corbin, seeing his entire life end, snapped. "You're a dead man, Carter," he screamed, lunging over the table. "You're dead, you hear me?" Bailiffs tackled him. "Order!" Evelyn's gavel cracked. "Remove Officer Corbin. He is held in contempt, and add witness intimidation to his charges." The retaliation was no longer just political. That night, Evelyn found her car in the courthouse garage. All 4 tires were slashed. The word "traitor" was spray-painted in red across the driver's side. She was taking pictures of it for evidence when Leo called her. His voice was broken. "Judge, it's Carter. He's in the ICU. Someone ambushed him in his driveway. They beat him. Badly." Evelyn rushed to the hospital. Carter was a mass of purple bruises and white tubes, but he was alive. He motioned her closer. "They wanted the files," he whispered, his voice a dry rasp. "The originals. On Thorne and Kirby. Don't worry. They're safe. They didn't get them." When Evelyn returned to her dark, quiet home, an envelope was taped to her front door. Inside was a single, grainy photograph. It was Ben Carter, lying bloody and unconscious in his driveway. On the back, one sentence was written in block letters: "Next time, we won't stop." She didn't sleep. She sat in her office, the photo on her desk, and she prepared for the final day. The courthouse was a fortress. Federal marshals, called in by an anonymous tip, were everywhere. The gallery was standing room only. D.A. Kirby's seat was conspicuously empty. Chief Judge Thorne, the man behind it all, stood in the back, his arms crossed, watching. Evelyn entered. The room went silent. She took the bench. "Before the defense begins its final arguments," she said, "this court has new evidence to enter into the public record." The defense attorney, a new one assigned after the last one quit, jumped up. "Objection. Discovery is closed." "Overruled, counsel. This evidence pertains to a pattern of systemic corruption that has defined this entire case." She held up a thick file. "I have here the complete, unsealed disciplinary file of Deputy Frank Miller." Objection. That's protected. Overruled. This file, illegally sealed by Chief Judge Thorne, details 47 separate complaints of harassment, racial profiling, and abuse of power. She read every single one, her voice ringing through the silent room. With each one, Thorne's face grew darker. And now, Evelyn said, it details his role in the assault of a federal judge. That judge was me. She looked at the jury. The defense will claim this is my personal vendetta, that I am unstable. They will try to make me the criminal. But the truth has a funny way of surviving. She nodded to Leo. The court will now view security footage from the day of the incident. Objection, there is no footage, the attorney yelled. There is this footage, Evelyn said. The large courtroom screens flickered to life. It was Nina's video. Raw, high definition, and undeniable. The room watched in horrified silence. They saw the back room. They saw her, trapped in the chair. They saw Corbin, laughing as he cut her hair. They heard Vance. Smile for the camera, Judge. They heard Miller. Hold her down tight. A juror gasped, covering her mouth. A reporter ran from the room. Paul Vance, the one who took the photos, turned and vomited into a wastebasket. This is garbage, Corbin screamed, his face purple. It's a fake. It's a setup. That bitch set us up. The courtroom doors flew open, not with bailiffs, with suited FBI agents. Special Agent Julia Rayner, Department of Justice, a tall woman announced, flashing her badge. By order of the Attorney General, this is now a federal investigation. We are taking custody of all courthouse records. Chief Judge Thorne, District Attorney Kirby, you are to come with us. Thorne's face, for the first time, showed pure, unadulterated terror. Corbin and Vance sat broken as agents cuffed their former protector. Sentencing day was a new beginning. Rick Corbin, Paul Vance, and Frank Miller stood before her, not in uniforms, but in orange jumpsuits. Chief Judge Thorne had already taken a plea deal. D.A. Samuel Kirby had resigned in disgrace and was facing disbarment. Evelyn looked at the three men who had assaulted her. You believed your badges gave you power, she said, her voice filling the chamber. You were wrong. They gave you a responsibility you betrayed. You didn't just assault me. You assaulted the very idea of justice. Frank Miller, for your conspiracy and long-standing abuse of power, this court sentences you to 8 years in federal prison. Mark Corbin, for your brutality, 12 years. Paul Vance, for your cruelty and clear enjoyment of it, 15 years. She struck the gavel. The gallery erupted in applause. And this court has one final order, she shouted over the noise. All case files previously sealed by Elias Thorne are to be reopened and reviewed by an independent commission. Weeks later, the courthouse was a different place. The Reed model of civilian oversight and transparent complaint systems was being implemented. Detective Carter, now out of the hospital, was heading the new task force. Leo walked into her chambers, a wide grin on his face. The president's office just called. The Senate is fast-tracking your nomination. Congratulations, Chief Judge Reed. That night, Evelyn stood in her bathroom. Her hair was growing back in soft, uneven patches. She looked at it for a moment, then picked up a razor and carefully, cleanly, shaved it smooth. It was no longer a mark of their shame. It was her crown of defiance. The next morning, Chief Judge Reed, her head held high, walked into her new courtroom. All rise, the bailiff said. She took her seat, looked out at the faces of justice, new, hopeful, and finally fair, and brought down her gavel. I hope you enjoyed that story. Please share it with your friends and subscribe so that you do not miss out on the next one. In the meantime, I have handpicked 2 stories for you that I think you will enjoy. Have a great day.